let's get to the right, because I think, even though I think this book is obviously not designed for liberals, I do think that when someone on the right is prepared to take on some extremes on their side, just as I do when people on the left are doing it with us, deserve support and engagement, at least engagement. You don't have to believe, but you can engage the ideas. How would you describe the post-Christian right? I mean, you mentioned Ross Douthat had a lovely column once. He also had a really interesting book called Bad Religion, which you may have read or not. How would you define the post-Christian right, and where do you see it percolating?
It is a right that, like a secular left, has a belief in the use of government to advance a vision, a positive vision for society that is way more dystopian than they would believe, and that to get there, they must embrace all of the things they've condemned in the left and become like them. They must, this would be, for those on the left listening, this is a characterization of how the right sees the left. You may say the left's not like that. It's actually the right, but the right sees the left as using power for the sake of power to advance their agenda, trying to grow government and wield it and use the forces of government to create a vision of society. This is where people on the right are now. The no enemy to the right of me, that the left has used lawfare, we must use lawfare. They see themselves as a mirror image of the left. Someone sent me a tweet from a kid who's now with the College Republican National Committee who said, "We must become monsters," talking about the right. And there's a godlessness, there's a lack of grace, there's a lack of mercy.
Absolutely, there's a lack of mercy, because when you have defined, and this is partly what they've done, and again, it's apocalypticism, isn't it? It's eschatology. Like, is that things are coming to a head, things are in such an emergency, we have to throw out everything we previously believed because we've got to storm the cockpit or we're going down. And I don't think history teaches you that. Actually, I think it's a longer story than that. There are terrible moments and bad choices, but I don't think it's existential in that sense. Who are you thinking of, though? I mean, when you say post-Christian, you mean a belief in strength for its own right, a belief in masculinity,
power
as its own
post-constitutional. I mean, and these are more the brain jackasses of social media on the right that you see. But I mean, a lot of people who embrace Michael Anton's Flight 93 theory of the election and surrounded Donald Trump and his administration, that we've got to wield power, the left can't wield power, and we're going to save ourselves from a hell on earth. And not to go back to the climate change issue, but a lot of the rhetoric of the most aggressive environmentalists that just stop oil people. You hear a lot of the same sort of rhetoric on the right, that the world is going to come to an end unless we take dramatic action to stop this apocalypse coming. And I mean, the downside, of course, of the post-Christian right is they have no concept of the sovereignty of God.
We'll get to that in 1 second. But yes, there is. I want to read a little quote from the book because people get a sense of what it is. Because here you talk about the post-Christian right. Quote, "We're seeing the rise of a post-Christian right that wants to just beat the left. It holds the left in contempt just as the left holds the right in contempt. It is bitter, humorless, and focused on fighting. It has as little grace as the left. It's filled with self-proclaimed Christians who neither darken the doorway of a church nor crack open a Bible, and even a few regular church attendees who put a political victory ahead of the cross. Both sides are playing the devil's game. The devil cannot stand to be mocked, neither can the people who think Jesus will save them COVID-19, but have to take a cavalcade of pills to save them from heart disease, diabetes, asthma, and all the other ailments they have. Neither can the people who still believe the election was stolen by electronic voting machines." Now, those are fighting words, Eric, because you really are taking on some myths and some. Where does this come from?
Oh, it comes from having tried to be a conservative talk radio show host who happens to be actually very successful at it, probably more successful than my critics would realize, but who constantly now deals with people who email me or leave messages or they call my show and they absolutely feel like the world is coming to an end. And I feel angry for those people that they've listened to people who've lied to them. that they believe that there's a heaven and a hell and there's God and there's a day of judgment, and yet they think that somehow the whole world is coming to an end. They've put the United States ahead of saving souls for Jesus. And it really does make me mad, and I'm willing to have angrier words than maybe I should say for people on my own side who I think are deluding senior citizens into thinking their world is coming to an end and making people angry just for profit. And we should call that out.